Well, I'm looking you mentioned Duncan before, didn't you?
I don't think I have. No,
You mentioned someone and it's on a note someplace that when you
I
were in,
don't think because I'd forgotten all about him.
oh,
And
he,
then I remembered about him. And then I tried to search for the little book that I had and I couldn't find it. So I forgot about him again. And then when you said, could I present a book? I thought, what shall I do? And I thought, I know, I'll do Barbara Ray's Arctic sketchbook.
oh,
So we could have a book that was a sketchbook as well. So I was searching for that, which I couldn't
oh.
find, but I found this Duncan one, which I hadn't been able to find before. It's because they're skinny. It's
Yeah.
because they're skinny, because I haven't got them in any sort of alphabetical order or anything. It was Patricia sent me a message a couple of years ago to say, oh no, 1 year ago, to say I might be interested in this video that would be on the Scottish Gallery site. So I watched this video on the Scottish Gallery site. I've never been to the gallery, it's in Edinburgh. And it was on this man called Duncan Shanks. And I thought his work was wonderful.
Yeah,
I
I
loved the colour. I loved the colour and the energy and everything else. So of course, what did I do?
bought a book.
I sent for the book, which came, and yeah, I enjoyed it. It's hardly got any text. So what I propose to do is to just read the introduction, the foreword. And then I thought we could look at the pictures. And then there's a little bit that he wrote. Um,
Would it
and
help to have one of his images up while you're reading that?
yeah. Anything, I should think. It doesn't matter. And I've been this afternoon onto the Scottish Gallery's website, and they have dozens and dozens and dozens of films, but actually I couldn't find that particular film again. So I don't know whether it's still available. But interestingly, he and a woman with his name, so it's either his daughter or his wife, have a joint exhibition there at the moment as well. So that's interesting. And this is the foreword to the book, and it's by Tommy. Now, how would you pronounce his surname? ZYW. Anyway, Tommy, this man in 2022 wrote this. Okay. A landscape of sorrow and hope. Duncan Shanks has lived in Crossford in the Clyde Valley. Clyde's one of the big rivers in Scotland for over 50 years. The river which flows past the bottom of his house and garden is a constant presence in his life. The water lapping the tangled bank is an ever-present soundtrack. Slow surface currents swirl hypnotically in high summer, but in spate the river can swell to twice the size, threatening to engulf the bridge in the village and leaving the banks flattened and sodden in its aftermath. It is only when the river freezes that the surface is still, a rare phenomenon, which is the inspiration for several works in this exhibition. From his studio at the top of the garden, Shanks sees the flow of water in the spring and summer. In the spring and summer, the view partly obscured by foliage. For Shanks, the studio and garden are intrinsically one. Work begins in the garden with his sketchbook before being reprised, sampled, left, repainted, discarded, then rediscovered and resolved. The journey of a painting echoing the life of the garden, which is cultivated but then left to follow its own untamed path. Previous exhibitions have focused on the drama of the landscape and the balance between structure and chaos, like the Greenhouse series in his show Drawing the Year in 2013. The exhibition at the Talbot Rice in 1998 captured the falls of Clyde, the subject being the water as it cascaded from the high rocks, creating a wall of pure energy. Storms and fires on Tinto Hill have also been a rich source of inspiration, recording the sky alive with a crackle of lightning and towering clouds of darkness. Now, for Shanks, this little corner of the Clyde Valley has all the magnificence and drama of a grand vista. It is the act of looking which is the driving force behind his art. By observing the garden and river every day, moments can be witnessed that he will have never seen before. This might take the form of a low winter sun, piercing through the tangled branches like a laser, dissolving form, or the spring in the Davinghill burn. A burn is the Scottish word for just a small river, frothing into the Clyde with a lace of pattern and energy. Shanks is constantly pushing his painting forward in a search for new ways to share his experience of the natural world. The surface of the painting is important, and he will vary his application of the paint to translate the texture of his experience. Using water-based medium, there is no clear distinction between drawing and painting. The struggle towards resolution dictating the depth of layers and energy in the brushstrokes. For Shanks, painting matters, toil is essential, doubt and even suffering a necessary corollary to the creative process. A life dedicated to art, sometimes in the face of indifference, a work ethic that sees a day without painting or drawing as wasted, a voracious appetite to find parallels in writing and music. This is Shanks' world, undimmed after a career spanning 6 decades, and one he allows us to share in our festival exhibition at the Scottish Gallery. There you go. Okay.
Energy in these paintings is incredible. And as you
I
said,
know, isn't it?
I would love to see the originals.
Yeah, so would I. There's then his writing, and then there's the sort of title of this section, which he called Light, and then a hyphen, Sun and Moon. So all of these, so that's the beginning of the book.
There he
There
is.
he is. Where does he get the color from?
He's playing.
Yeah.
That's what we see when we look outside for the most part, except in the fall. But when you play with color and you mix, even with our little strips, mixing color, when you see the beautiful colors that you can make, you pop them into your paintings, depending.
You want to use them.
That's it. You just have to pick whether it's warm or cool and what the value is. And looking at his paintings is such a great illustration of that. I used to wonder when I would see paintings like his that I just loved, and this is before I went back and taught myself about color. And I would ask the same question all the time. I thought, how do they see that? But I didn't realize that they weren't necessarily seeing it. And I thought that for a while. But then after all these years of playing with color and, the color scheme game, all those games that I made up for myself, it's funny because I will look at an ordinary scene and I'll get into a state of mind where I actually do see those colors. It's like I'm projecting what might be, oh, what would, if there's a shadow and it just looks gray, and I think, oh, well, it can't just be gray. And I'll start to look. And the more I look, the more color I see in it. And then all of a sudden, the world looks like his paintings. And that's why it's so worth painting every day, sketching every day, getting your eye so that at some point, it's like you don't know what's reality and what's made up. And you start to feel like you're seeing wavelengths, which is what color is wavelengths.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's a great tradition, which I have mentioned before when we were talking about Kieran Stiles, whose workshop I went on. I mentioned the artist Joan Erdley, who again her work is shown in this gallery sometimes. And I mentioned at that time the Scottish colorists. So there is a great, who I don't know a lot about, but I just know they exist. So I've got to do some research on them. And didn't we discuss them as well, I think, when we were thinking about the group of 7?
Yes. And I just I was clearing my table off here because I was doing all the wedding stuff on this table, the tags and things.
Yeah,
And that slip of paper was there with the note, the Scottish colorists,
yeah,
look,
yeah,
I
yeah.
not yet, but I will. Because
So there's this tradition that in Scotland, which I mean, Scotland is the north of the British Isles geographically. I mean, the very north are the islands, the Shetland Isles, which are actually nearer to Oslo than they are to London. And they are part of the United Kingdom, part of the British Isles. Up there, you're talking about dark nights in the winter, with not a lot of sunshine in Shetland. Scotland is very, very beautiful and has beautiful mountains and beautiful forests and beautiful rivers and beautiful lakes. And yeah, there is lots and lots of colour, but there's also lots of bad weather, like in Wales, and darkness, dimness, flatness. And yet there's a lot of Scottish artists. I mean, Barbara Ray is one of them as well. I mean, colour is just, well, Barbara Ray is synonymous with colour, isn't she? And
and
the Scottish colourists, they're just amazing. Maybe they're more meditative or mindful. And as you just said, when you really look, you start to see colours, instead of it, oh, look, that's green. What colour is he standing in? Oh, lots of neutrals and a little splash of bright green. But no, lots and lots of colours there, I'm sure.
look
Yes,
in this photo of him standing there. Look at that blue that's right behind his head.
yes,
Now,
yes.
that could be exaggerated. When you
Yeah,
look at that and think
yeah,
of it exaggerated, then all of a sudden the water that might have appeared gray looks lavender, and you start to see cool lavenders and warm lavenders. And
yeah, yeah.
and when you see that, the greens start to glow more. And I think maybe when there's not bright colors that are overpowering, like in the tropics, or like in, I don't know, in Mexico, where they have bright colors, um you do look harder because it's subtle. And when you can unravel that subtlety, it, you discover things. Look at how valuable neutrals are to make colors sing. When you live in an area that's not all bright and cheery all the time, you tune into that more. And you
Mhm.
said you become more observant, keener observers.
Mm.
I mean, Barbara Ray, where she gets her color from, like, was at the Arctic. Okay, so she's in the Arctic. How how many of her colors do you see in the Arctic?
Mm. Mm.
Not not too many, but she, definitely she puts them in purposefully. I mean, they're
Mm.
meaningful in one way or another, which I think is really exciting.
I do. I think it's fantastic. So shall we look at some of them?
Yes.
That's the next bit that I'll read that little bit in a minute, but let's look at a few of his paintings. And these ones are about sun and moon. And that, when I saw that,
Which
go
one?
back to that last slide, that's Van Gogh to me.
Yes.
His pollarded trees, you know, and the movement in the water is a very sort of Van Gogh type,
Oh,
brushwork and things.
I love this.
Right, that's called Source, isn't it? The title is there. I mean, presumably that's a close-up. I mean, oh, it's like one of these automatic drawings in a way,
Yeah,
and not in another way.
looks like a marriage of Hundertwasser and Pollock.
Oh, I can't believe this. Do you know, this is all getting absolutely ridiculous. I'm today reading a book by Julia Bradbury on walking and the benefits of walking, and she was mentioning fractals.
Yeah.
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 And so I just was Googling it 10 minutes ago, just before we started, all about fractals and what they are. And the artist that was being talked about in one of the little bits that I read was Jackson Pollock. And apparently his art was all about fractals. Did you
Wow.
know that? And then you mentioned Jackson Pollock.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've fractals before I knew they were called fractals. It was something that noticed, oh, when I was a little kid, how the pattern in a rock was similar to the pattern of the way the tree grows, is similar to the pattern of seaweed.
Yeah.
The pattern same, whether they be in air, water, and then I guess I don't know, the late 70s when people started talking about fractals, and I just love them. I love the mathematics of it all. And yeah,
Well, look it up, because apparently they've done all sort of research on Pollock's paintings, and that's how you can tell if it's an imitation of a Pollock, because it, under a close examination, it hasn't got fractals. His
wow.
work is full of fractals. Now there we go. You didn't know that, did you?
No, and I hard time connecting his work with fractals.
No, I know. So look it up. Anyway, that was an aside. I find it extraordinary at the moment. I keep finding similarities in things I'm reading and things people are saying and things I'm hearing and things you're saying and
Yeah.
it's just as though there's some force, some energy somewhere that's pulling lots of things together,
I
But
think
yes,
weaving. It's weaving the fabric that finally makes sense.
yeah.
How old is he?
He was born in 1937. And he must still be alive, because he's got an exhibition at the moment.
Oh.
And they don't talk about it as being, that he's passed away.
And quite a few of these are acrylic on paper, and they're relatively small, right?
Yeah.
Because
And
thinking that they're really big because I want them to be big, but they're not that big.
no. And he's got, I don't know if I sent you this picture, but there is a picture of him standing by the river with his sketchbook, and it looks to me as though he's got soft pastels with him. And didn't it say that there isn't much, that he's using water-based medium? There is no clear distinction between drawing and painting.
Yeah, I mean, you draw with paint, you draw with a brush.
Yeah.
Edge against another edge creates a line. But this, I could look at this painting forever. I mean, it just,
it's wonderful, isn't it? There's several of them that I could look at forever.
and is this, you think this is a detail, or you think
I think it is.
it looks as if it might be, but I don't mind it the way it is. I really love those yellow lines on top of the somewhat circular kind of thing.
And it does speak of water, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And seeing through the water, all kinds of things. And the color is just
Color.
delightful.
He throws the kitchen sink at the color, doesn't he? But it works. And what did I read, didn't I? What does he say about the layers?
To resolve, he builds up more and more.
Yeah, it keeps on until the picture's resolved. Here we go. The struggle towards resolution dictating the depth of layers and energy in the brushstrokes. So he just goes on until it isn't asking him any more questions.
You know what else is surprising about these is that there is so much energy in a small painting. I mean, he must be really loose in holding his brushes, tools, because the motion look much more like something that comes like a conductor conducting, a big
sort of a whole body movement. I mean, if you go on, have you got the one Sunrise 3 or any of those next? No, that one. Here we go.
One,
Storm, Sunrise. I mean, they're really small. Storm, that's 27.5 by 28. 30 centimeters is a foot, is 12 inches. I mean, they're tiny, aren't they?
yeah.
Sunrise 1 is 40 by 40. So, you know, it's just a little bit bigger, but it's still, as you say, they're really small pieces of paper.
And to have that much energy, that much variety of color resolved in such a good way on such a small piece.
Yeah,
Amazing.
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sunrise 2. Again, you see this 18.5 by 20. I hadn't really thought of it until you said that.
10
How
inches.
small they are.
So this is like 8 inches. It's less than 8 by 8.
I always remember that 30 centimeters is 12 inches. You know, it's a ruler length. So 20 centimeters is 8 inches. Yeah. So it's 8 inches by a bit less than 8 inches. He must use really small brushes, don't you think?
And doesn't it look like it's oil pastel? He says acrylic on paper. I believe it.
Do you think he does multiple transparent layers and then puts some thick acrylic on top? I mean, in that one Hazy Sun, the bottom to the right, you know, there's like dribbles, isn't there, of yellow and orange and things.
I think those are just at the end because I think that it has to be veils, you know, thin layers, just using, I think, very diluted acrylic for a lot of it to get layering and kind of working together without hard edges. I don't think he ever goes really thick. I think that the impression of that is due to building up in the color. Look at the tree on the left.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like that really light blue, that teal blue almost, could be a thick glop of paint, but I don't think it is. Okay, Gustav Klimt, his work, before I saw his work in life, in real life, I had done copies of his and I used thick paint. It looked to me like he had a whole lot of thick paint. He had all these little splotches all over the place, you know, like this. And then I saw the originals and there was hardly any paint on the canvas at all. It was like he only had 5 tubes of paint to last him his lifetime. So he stretched. I was shocked because you stand back and in my head, I'm thinking, oh, to get that kind of blue to dance like that, you need a real good scoop of it or something. It's mastery of color. So yeah, I think some of them, like the drizzly thing, he's got to have it thick enough that it's going to stay where he puts it.
Yeah.
So he thins it down a lot. But that, I think the very end things.
End thing, yeah, I agree.
Are thicker, not too thick. Be fun to see. It would be really great to see an original.
And what are the next ones? And then I'll read what he says about his work.
That one.
Oh, look, I love that.
I do too. And look
I
at
love it.
branches and the wild colors in the top of the tree.
Yeah.
Doesn't it look like pastel?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
That too.
I'm looking at the picture. Oh, look at that one. Yes. Which one is that? Riverbank. I mean, I've got the book with the reproductions, which are better. But he has got that tangle, hasn't he, of the structure of those trees that live by rivers, you know, as they bend over.
And the waterman.
And that one is 76 by 102. So that one is bigger, 102 centimeters. So that's, you know, over 36 inches. So that one is bigger. Right. Let me read you what he says about his work. So that's a bit exploring the mystery, correspondence between nature and imagination. So I guess that's what he's trying to do. The pandemic has cast a great shadow over our world and our lives, and with the emerging evidence of climate change, we have been forced to face the uncertainty of life as we have known it. I live by the river, and nature has been my distraction from darker thoughts through 2 difficult years. Solitary by nature, my work routine has changed little, but the overriding physiological atmosphere has had its consequences. I like to be active and outdoors. I draw almost every day, not towards a specific painting, but simply to be in nature. I move through the landscape, making notes of anything which catches my eye. With the enforced isolation from people and places, my focus has turned inwards to my close surroundings, to the river and the riverbank. During the pandemic, the riverbank has become an obsession. Captivated by the mesmeric power of water, my drawings try to capture the river's constant motion, following its pattern formation, distortions, and changing accents with a scribbled bundle of lines, chaotic configurations of unconstrained energy. The tree-lined bank is less dramatic, but equally compelling, lush and claustrophobic in August, stark in winter, with only the bare brittle bones of the summer's growth, wild roses twisted through branches of larch and cherry, cascading to the ground in impenetrable screens, which only the low winter sun can fracture and dissolve. Nothing about the scatter of visual notes that begin to cover my studio wall seems stable or predictable. The overall layered skeins of activity are echoed and complemented in the painting process. Working with paper spread across my studio floor, the sense of instability and unrest is unchecked. I begin painting with few preconceptions and let the mark-making dictate the development. The instinct to organize and control the scribbles, strips, and blobs that spread across my paper is forgotten in the mindless momentum of the moment. From the blocks of moving, overall paint, I gradually find my river images continually dismantling and reconstructing their form and design in a search for that elusive moment when paint and nature come together. Though unplanned and unintentional, the predominant theme and character which has emerged from my work has been a sense of enclosure. It is a restless yet invigorating confinement, and unlike the tranquility of a medieval closed garden or the well-tended flower beds and pools of Giverny, is an unforgiving close-up of untamed nature. Boccaccio, I think you would say, Boccaccio, in the 14th century described his companions on the slopes of the Fiesole Hills as such, in a plot of ground like a meadow, the grass deep spangled with 1,000 different flowers, while the plague festered outside the walls, end of quote. This flowery meadow, this sanctuary of peace which the poet chronicles, is very different from the dense intertwining growth which spread across my papers and through some paintings. And though some paintings are more meditative, there is never an escape from the tension between the rivers and the trees. Living with my art at this time has not always been comfortable. As Bonnard said, "He who sings is not always happy." In this time of loss and sadness, it is only the river which is a continuing life force, a mirror of hope and dreams. It has been an essential and absorbing part of my life for many years, but vital to me during the pandemic. So to suggest the flow of life beyond a painting's edge is to imply hope against extinction. Duncan Shanks, 2022.
Wow. He has a lifetime of experimenting to dip into. And I think that after decades of painting, if you're a painter that you just have to paint, you're not doing it to paint for specific exhibits or paint for a gallery to sell. But if you're going through these times like he is, of reflecting and expressing his world, everything comes through. He taps into everything he's ever known in my mind, and it shows. Like, of this, every painting I look at takes me on a voyage, and on that, it's almost like each voyage is an entire lifetime. I don't know that I'm making any sense at all, but it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you talk about, if we talk about intention, he draws because he has to, and because he's in nature. And I guess he paints because he has to. Here, from the blocks of moving overall paint, I gradually find my river images. continually dismantling, reconstructing their form and design in a search for that elusive moment when paint and nature come together.
I love that.
That's great, isn't it? When paint and nature come together, that elusive moment.
I think that's a similar moment to when you've created a piece in any way, and you look at it and you realize that there is such a strong connection. For me, it's when I look at it, it feels like I'm looking in a mirror. Not that the painting looks like me, but I look at it and I see all those things that I wanted to express or I was feeling being projected back to me. I've thought about this a lot lately since I started the pack series, and of all the ones I've done, I guess over 50 of them now, and there are maybe at the most 9 that I feel that way. And I look to see why. I can't really say why. I can come up with some reasons, but that for me is the ultimate. I mean, that's what I've always wanted, was to be able to express it visually, because that's what I'm compelled to do. And when it's successful, you know that not everybody's going to understand that language, just like a poet write a poem. And just because it's words and we should understand words, it doesn't mean we have any idea of what the poet's really saying, or a novel or anything, but it will reach people in some way. It's out there. And I just have such a strong feeling with Duncan's work that it's really reflecting that experience of his that he's shared and recognized that that's what it was. And then we look at it and we each get a different feel for it, but it definitely, for me, it strikes deeply. You know, it's as if I've had a conversation with him or sat there with him, you know, without having to have that conversation, just sharing the painting.
Now, he doesn't articulate the fact. He says here, he's searching for that elusive moment when paint and nature come together. He tends to talk about nature and his response to nature and his process with paint and various things. He doesn't actually articulate that really what it's about is an emotional response. I don't think he says that for whatever reason, but surely it is. Surely all of these are about him and his response.
I would just say that it's where nature and what exactly did
paint and nature come together?
Come together. So it's expressing the same thing. It's saying the same thing, which means that whatever's evoked from nature is also evoked from the painting.
Yeah.
That's not his paintings aren't a journalistic description of the river.
No, they're
purely emotional. And he utilizes all of his tools, his understanding of color and value and shape and light, you know, all those things, to get to that point where the painting feels like the experience.
Yeah.
When he says he puts the paper on the floor, do you think that he then cuts them down to these sizes? You know, like the foundations?
I don't know. I don't have any way of knowing. There are a few pictures of him in his studio, but I didn't send a photo of that because they were not useful. It just shows a sketchbook with some quite realistic drawings of the river, really.
And when did he do those?
As he says in his writing, he just goes out every day and does them.
Okay.
Is that any use? Can you see that?
Yeah. It's hard to see how realistic they are, though.
Yeah. I mean, he's just got an A4 sketchbook, and I would suggest that that's passed on.
I'd be interested to see what his work was like 10 years ago or 20 years
ago.
Well,
if you go on to the Scottish Gallery website and put in his name, no, you don't even have to do that. You just have to look at current exhibitions. As I say, it's him and I think it might be his wife. And a lot of the work of his that's in it is really old, 60s and 70s.
Oh, really? Oh, I definitely take a look.
Yeah.
Huh.
Have we got time to just whiz through the rest of these?
Let me share.
I'm sure there's a Van Gogh influence as well here.
I think so. I mean, the strokes and
It's these twisted trees as well. Summer bank.
That feels a little like Sargent too.
Yes. Oh, look at that. That's a lot more abstract, isn't it? I don't know which one that is. Hang on. Let me find that one.
It's probably
Nature Untamed. We're in Nature Untamed, aren't we? Okay, raindrops.
this one I remember kind of jumped out at me because not the I see the two green leaves.
Mm.
The one on the more to the right with more yellow in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That works well. In my head, that seems part of it. The other one isn't as integrated. And
Mm.
but I sort of like that because somehow that makes the water beneath it seem even more whirly.
Mm. And it is what it's like, isn't it? When there's just a few leaves left hanging on the tree. You
Yes.
know, they are sort of suspended in a very unnatural way
Right.
above the water. And also, interestingly, if you've watched Tansy, I don't know whether you've got as far as that, but in her reading materials course, reading matter course, she has a whole section on water and rain, and she draws the distinction between water running along and the flow of water and raindrops splatting down with concentric circles. And look at the concentric circles just put on top of the flow. But it's true, it's what happens
Yes.
actually, you
And
know?
the little orange strips that come and go.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Movement,
lovely.
blood.
Move. Ah,
Look at that.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Into it. How can such a
It's,
small painting be so powerful?
this is 70 by 100, so that is a little bit bigger, but it's still so 3 foot,
Yeah.
2.5, 2 and a bit foot by 3 foot.
And look at that one. You
I know. And that is Sun on the Water, and that's 80 by 102.
can almost hear the rush of things.
Yeah, autumn.
Now, this water just, it almost looks super realistic, even though it's so abstract.
Yes.
Look at the color in here.
Right, this one, which is this one? Hang on. I think that's almost back.
Is that in a different section? I think I put them the way that.
Night Garden. That one is 122 by 153.
So that's bigger.
Yeah,
And yet that looks like it could be small.
yeah, because there's such a lot of detail, isn't there?
Oh.
Night Garden. Wow. These river ones are the ones that I love. This is High Water, acrylic on paper, 70 by 83 centimeters. Wow.
And
That
the
water is rushing past, isn't it?
yes, and the leaves almost look like they're cut out paper and glued on. They look so as if they're being about to blow off the paper.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. And I love that sort of perspective in the line of the pollarded bushes. I love it. Spate 1 and spate 2. Yeah. And this is exactly what happens when the river floods, really, and the trees are almost washed away.
These
Beautiful.
these colors are delicious.
Right, downpour, 33.5 centimeters by 44. So not big.
And that looks more like what I think of when I think of acrylic. I mean, so many of these just don't, I they don't ring acrylic for me.
Yeah.
He gets so much out of them, so much that
Mm.
it's inspiring.
Flowing fast. That is 80 by 121. And in the reproduction in the book, these orangey lines are much more of a vermilion.
Yeah, they look very orange here.
Fantastic. Layers and layers. Look at these little lines and thin lines and then thicker ones. And
I'm gonna have to,
you're right, it's so gestural that you would think it would be so much bigger.
and a different medium.
Have you got Flotsam and Jetsam? No, that's
Flotsam and Jetsam, right there.
oh, there you go.
Perfect. Yeah.
I just love them.
And look at how murky these colors are.
Yeah,
They,
that's the power of neutrals, isn't it?
yes, it is. Wow. Now, are these redder in the book?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's more like a
Cadmium.
cadmium red, vermilion type thing. Yeah, they're all a little bit warmer. The
Okay.
blue's quite good. Right, now this is the frozen ones, isn't it? He said there's very few of them. And he does a lot of these last ones, and I remember this in the film, are plants that are hanging upside down.
Like vines from trees or
Yeah, yeah.
uh
That one is sun, acrylic. Oh, that's acrylic and collage. And that's 41.5 by 36. There's some collage on that.
of 100 Vassar.
That surely is reflections, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Because up here you can see the trees, and then this is
Yeah,
water
yeah,
reflecting. Oh,
yeah, yeah.
there he is.
There he is with his sketchbook. Now, I think he's got soft pastels in that box.
Oh.
Don't you?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then I just included
And
those.
then that's his sort of little life history.
Thank you so much. I mean,
Well, just interesting, isn't it? And go on their website and have a look at his current exhibition,
yeah,
his work from years ago. But quite a prolific artist. Gorgeous, gorgeous.
I may try
He's
playing.
he's an aged man now, isn't he? Well, 12 years older than me, so he's 85-ish.
He sure does paint well still. Look what
Yeah,
I have to look forward to.
I know.
Great.
I wish. Crikey.
Well, we may have to come back to him too in another way.
Oh, who knows? Perhaps, perhaps I should do some research on the Scottish colorists and Joan Erdley. I haven't got a Joan Erdley book.
Would it be too much to ask you to do that for next Monday?
Yeah, I'll see what I can find. I haven't got any reference books, and we could perhaps draw together some, whether they're intentional, unintentional, unknown, unconscious, conscious links between all of these people,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. They're all unique on their own.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
at the same
Yeah.
time, brings to mind a lot of the people, the vibrancy, the handling of color in so many ways. I don't even want to say it's the same color palette, but it is a similar color palette. And so is that vitality. Yes, the vitality comes from marks or strokes. There's an awful lot that comes simply from the color.
Those two you've got on there now, Storm. I mean, it's just wonderful, isn't it? The use of color there, page 6. Let me look at it in the book. Oh, it's tiny in the book, and it's a small painting. It looks better on the screen, actually.
That's why it's nice to see the originals. And even, I don't even really care. I'm inspired by this. So when I'm painting, I would want mine to have that kind of strength. So whether that painting really had that strength or not almost doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I think it does. I think the reproduction in the book probably doesn't do it justice, but putting it on the screen sort of does. I'm sure he's using lots of layers all the time.
Yes. And certainly Storm looks like it's thick paint, but I don't know.
Layers of thin. I'd like to know more about his process, really. I wonder if there's any other books. Layers of thin, as you say, veils, and then there's quite a lot of line work, isn't there, in most of them as well? So he is drawing with a brush.
It looks like strokes of charcoal in the one on the right.
Yeah, yes.
So I wonder what kind of brush he uses. He must, those brushes that from A Gallo. Do I have one here? This kind of brush. I'm going to unshare
Mm.
this. Oops, let's see.
Oh, yeah, I haven't got those, but
Really long, thin ones. It seems like he's using something like this. Able to
mm,
get the the expressive
mm,
gets, and all those little lines
mm,
that are easy to do if you're working in pastel or anything of that sort. But paint, it's not that easy to keep building
mm.
all those little marks with such.
Dry paint. So lots of different textures of paint, really.
And even
Thin,
like it dries quickly, but not that quickly.
no. Mm.
All right. Well, so we have even more work cut out for us.
Oh, I've got a busy time.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, just I too will look up some things and see if I can pull some examples of this Scottish colorist. And um you can also just send me links if you want. You don't have to.
Yeah, I will just send links. Patricia, I think, is driving to Italy. She's probably in Italy now because she would have a book, but I
Yeah.
don't think she's here. I don't think she's here. So
Well,
right, that's my bit. I've done my bit.
yes. And I'm going to hop off here and hop on to the sketchbook. See you in a minute.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.